Kiss capitalizes on the momentum from their breakthrough live album and jump back into the studio to try and deliver a more radio-friendly album. Here comes Destroyer.
Get ready for the 3324 podcast, where lifelong friends Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber share their love of all things music and movies. Dean has directed short films and is a music trivia buff. And Eric, trained in audio engineering, brings his extensive knowledge of music and film to the conversation as they discuss, debate, and celebrate their favorite albums, films, and much more.
Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. Home base for you if you're into music and movies and you love the mostly the old stuff. Some of the new stuff we kind of cover. We cover a lot of different things, but in the music and movie genre. So if you like to sit back and relax and hear about some music and movies that shaped Eric and ours lives. Is that right? Eric and ours?
Yeah.
Eric and my life?
That's best you're going to get it.
Apostrophe
yeah,
S.
Shaped our lives, not Eric and ours, but shaped our lives, Eric, including Eric.
Yeah.
Regardless of whatever it is, you've come to the right place. So if it's your first time, welcome aboard. Pull up a chair. We're going to have a great, fun conversation. So looking forward to this. And we've got new episodes every single week, like clockwork, Eric, right? We're like the post office. We deliver for you.
Yeah. I'm totally geeking out about just worthless.
Yeah, the stuff we like.
It's not worthless, though. It's not
it's
to us,
fun.
but, hopefully.
It's the fun stuff,
Yeah.
like Robin Williams said in Good Will Hunting, that's the good stuff.
Yes, it is.
That's the good stuff.
Yeah.
And helping us bring the good stuff, making his first appearance of 2024, Mr. Andrew Cremeans, backed by a very special guest behind him also. So I want to say first, hi, Andy. Go check him out on Andrew Cremeans art on Instagram. We're going to put a link in the show notes. So go check out what Andy's doing. He's a very busy guy. I don't think he has enough hands to keep in all the jars that he's got of things to keep busy with. Is that a fair statement?
It's a fair statement. I wish I had more hands.
or like Michael Keaton, multiplicity, just make more Andys and have them do stuff. And
I don't think anybody wants that.
Well, we would like it because then we could always have an Andy. Like you can have a podcast Andy.
Yeah, be permanent.
That he just goes and does. Yeah, he just comes and does the show.
Why does he get to do the fun stuff?
Well, then you make him do the dishwashing Andy, and then you be the podcast Andy. So we wouldn't know though.
That's true.
No.
We wouldn't know which one was was the real Andy, but he is flanked by a very special guest, which we just noticed when he signed on. Not the guitar in the background, just to the right of the guitar is a very special friend of ours, a friend of everybody's that likes science fiction, is R2D2. Yeah,
man, been working on him for a while. Been wanting to get a life-size R2D2 since I was born. As you know, technology is progressing and 3D printing and all that stuff is getting a lot cheaper. And there's websites that have parts here and that, and people do print runs of this or whatever. But I have the best story you've heard in a long time. I got to tell you this story. Okay. I recently found out that in Spanish speaking countries, the subtitles of Star Wars, made R2D2's name Arturito, which means Little Arthur in Spanish. So there's an entire generation of Spanish-speaking kids that grew up thinking that his name is Little Arthur. And I think that's the best thing I've ever heard in my life, because every time I see my robot, I turn around and I'm like, "Good morning, Little Arthur."
That made me tear up, man. That's fucking awesome.
I can't not think of him as Little Arthur now. Every time I watch the movies.
Yeah.
He's just a perfect little Arthur.
No, Andy. Okay, you said something that made me now that I think opened up a whole bunch of other questions. Hopefully, we'll get to the album. We'll get to what we can talk about. But did you 3D print that?
No, there's a lot of pieces. No. Some of the pieces are 3D printed though.
Okay.
There's the little cables on his feet and stuff like that. But they're all different kinds of parts and molds and all that stuff. Yep.
Okay, because I'm like, wow, that is, yes, 3D printing has come a long way if you're able to.
And there's some guys that do have 3D printed ones with the right amount of Bondo. You can make anything. So,
how long did it take to get everything, all the parts?
Probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
But I mean, like, it's the cool thing is like when I really started, and I'm sorry if this is boring, but like when I first really got into it.
Star Wars boring? No.
Like years ago, I really been wanted to do it. There's a website called the Astromech. There's astromech.net, I think, and then there's the Droid Builders Club that these guys would do print runs and stuff. But if you wanted to have like a chrome metal version like they do in the movies, it's close to $20,000, and it takes like 18 months to put together, and you've got like electronics and all this stuff or whatever. So it's just a whole other. If you find people that can do a mold of the torso, then like if it's all 1-to-1 scale and all the blueprints are online, you can get all the stuff, like the electronics.
I don't know, man. He looks pretty good to me.
Yeah, very neat. Very neat. Now, for those of you that are listening and not watching us, you've got a reason to go over to YouTube to check out the video version of this, because you'll see right behind Andy is a beautiful, gorgeous replica of Little Arthur. So absolutely, it looks fantastic. So yeah, go absolutely go check us out on YouTube, and then while you're there, go ahead and subscribe, because you never know what's going to be behind our guests when they join us. You never know what'll be back there. We've had Emmy Awards with Mr. Kevin Howard and all kinds of other things. So we've got R2D2 though. I think he takes the most interesting background right now for now.
Huh?
I was on a work call with people that I work with, and a couple of them are Spanish speaking, and I told the Little Arthur story, and they're like, yeah, I mean, well, that's his name, right? And I'm like, it's true, the story's true. And they're like, yeah, Little Arthur, I'm like, good Lord,
everything you heard was true. That is neat, and
I love it.
And you know what, we're in the same ballpark, because a year before Star Wars came out, this album came out from Kiss, Destroyer. So let's get into Eric's favorite word of recently, the statistics.
Because Dean's always used to say in stats.
That's what I have on my note. On my notes, it says, let's talk stats.
The stats is getting a little stale, I guess, but statistic, statistics. Why not go for the whole?
Yeah, we're fancy.
Trying to sound a little bit smarter. And what?
You know what? After all this time, it ain't working. Hasn't worked. Well, you know what? We'll keep swinging. So we're going to give you some statistics like we do in every single episode. We always start out with great factual information. So here it comes. This was released. Okay. It was released in March of 1976, produced by Bob Ezrin, who was a big time producer. At the time, really, Alice Cooper was really what attracted his work with Alice Cooper is what attracted Kiss to seeking out Bob Ezrin. There were 4 singles that were released. Shout It Out Loud hit number 31. Flaming Youth flamed out at 74. Detroit Rock City didn't really chart, but there was another song that was on the flip side, which they ended up releasing as a single, which was Beth, which hit number 7, which would be their biggest hit single. They really kind of, especially since it was their last single release, that the album was kind of had peaked, and then people, then DJs picked up on the flip side of this Detroit Rock City, and Beth was on it. And then they decided to release Beth as a single, and it just went gangbusters. Hit number 11 on Billboard, and 2 times platinum, which would be, to date, as far as I know, Kiss's still their biggest selling album. And it hit 2 times platinum in 2011. It finally hit there. So Andy is our resident Kiss fan, so we're going to defer. If I get anything wrong, except for when we get to our segment, 3 Lies and a Truth, because that is factually, some of it is incorrect on purpose, but when we get to that. But other than that, feel free to correct me if I have anything wrong, except for my opinions.
No, I'm sure you're right. It shocks me though that Flaming Youth charted higher than Detroit Rock City. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I remember Detroit. That song was all over the radio though. Heavy airplay on the FM stations. I recall. Beth used to be played on AM stations.
Oh yeah, Beth was huge. I remember
hence the mono version. When yes, Andy, I listened to the anniversary edition and a lot of those demos and stuff, and they do have the mono mix of Beth. And so that reminds me of listening, putting on AM station, not knowing it was Kiss at the time. Because that always blew my mind that song came from the same band. But yeah. Yeah,
Beth was a big. In '76, I remember too. It was all over the radio, and it was big, and it kind of put Kiss over the top. And Kiss, let's start here, Andy. Before we get into Destroyer, I think we got to talk a little bit about Kiss. And I think Kiss can be a very divisive or divisive, depending on how you pronounce it, very divisive band. I think there's the fervent followers, and I want to shout out one, Chris Navarra. Is a fervent Kiss fan. When I told him we were doing Destroyer, it started a whole conversation a couple days ago. So there are those Kiss fans that are part of the Kiss army.
Yeah,
fair to say are they a love them or hate them?
Oh yeah, of course.
You either get it or you don't, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I have Eric's known me for 25 years. I have always been an unapologetic Kiss fan. Just because, like, I mean, I'm all in. I'm the lunchbox, the toothpaste, the caskets, the condoms, whatever. I'm not going to buy it, of course, but I mean, like, I'm all over it. I mean, like, it's just when they were the biggest, I was a little kid, and they were presented in such a way that they just weren't human. They weren't human beings. And I was young enough to believe that. And there were no humans behind that makeup. They were comic book characters come to life. And I can't express that enough. Like I can still put myself in that position to where they were just, aliens or something, like when they came to town on tour, it was like meeting the actual Spider-Man or something was actually coming. They weren't real. And my uncle and my sister were huge fans. So I grew up as a toddler, basically seeing Kiss posters and action figures and comic books everywhere. So they were like a whole other thing. And then there was music also, which was really cool. So like, if I had never seen them or been exposed to them in the manner that I was, would I be as huge of a fan? I don't know, but I mean, it was the full package to me. It was the marketing, it was the toys, it was the music, it was something completely different. I mean, you didn't see like, I don't know, Jethro Tull action figures, so it's like,
yeah.
It was everything that I wanted. It was the energy. It was the different characters, the kabuki makeup, the comic books, the fire, the blood, the space lasers, everything. It was just, so I can't objectively make anybody believe that this is good music. I can't sit down and make the case and say that Sweet Pain from this album is a great song.
But what about Great Expectations?
Great Expectations is the dumbest Kiss song that's ever been recorded.
Thank you for saying.
I will go on record to say that Destroyer is my favorite Kiss album, and Great Expectation is the dumbest Kiss song ever. I mean, and that's saying a lot because they've got some pretty dumb songs, but it's just one of those things. I'm in for a penny, in for a pound sort of thing. So, but I mean, like you get older, and unfortunately, due to reality TV shows, you get to learn who Gene Simmons really is as a person and that sort of stuff. And then you're like, oh boy, I don't want to know this. And you learn to like separate the art from the artist over time and stuff. So like when I saw them twice on their farewell tour, twice on the same farewell tour. And at the same town, they came back. I'm watching them, and that's the demon singing. That's not the guy from Gene Simmons' Family Jewels, in my opinion. My brain just shuts it off. It's a whole other thing. Otherwise, you have to think about that stuff. But I don't. But so sorry, go ahead.
No. You started the first thing you started talking about was the iconography of Kiss.
Yeah.
And there's no other band, and we're not like Insane Clown Posse. None of that crap counts.
Yeah.
Like there was no other band that took this idea and ran with it. So yeah, there was the glam thing that was going on, right? Eric, David Bowie with Ziggy Stardust, and kind of there was that whole kind of sub genre of music, but Kiss went full in.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I don't understand the bad rap that they get. There were plenty of bands at that time, not even bands that we even know. I mean, there's a lot of like underground bands during the 70s who were doing kind of the same thing. Ridiculous, makeup, the whole bit. I mean, Kiss, took it to that real huge level. They knew what they were doing, though. That's the thing, that they just leaned right into what they were doing, and they did it brilliantly. It's entertainment. It is like Andy was saying. It's as a kid, you're totally enamored by it. I remember seeing imagery of course, my brother, had the album. He also had Kiss Alive and Kiss Alive 2 and all that stuff. So I was exposed to it really early on. And I thought it was cool too. It was like these guys in makeup and then they made the movie at that point, The Kiss Meets the Phantom and all that stuff. So it's like, yeah, it's campy. It's really, but when you're a kid, it was just,
especially at that time in the 70s, it feels like you were getting away with something by being allowed to look at their album covers and to be like, they were safe horror, like parents didn't know what to deal with them. But, remember Peter Gabriel had those big fruit heads and all that,
absolutely. Genesis. Yeah. It's to me, it's all part and parcel to what was going on in the 70s. Yeah. It's theater. It's whatever could grab your attention. ABBA had some pretty wild outfits from what I could recall. Earth, Wind and Fire. I mean, you think of the period, the time, and they just leaned into it. Maybe a bit more than other people did, but like Andy pointed out, the music was there. They had some good songs. They had some not so good songs, but
Well, I think that's where the bad rap comes in, Andy, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Is they're never thought of as great musicians. That's the thing. It was more. It seemed like their reputation was more sizzle than steak. It's like everything's flashy. They're gurgling blood and blowing fire, but they're not. Great. And on this album or everything I was reading, like Ace Frehley kept on they would just replace him and have another guitar player come in and. Because he wasn't really, up to snuff. So I think that's the kind of baggage that they carried. It was more about the image and more about the marketing, right? And I think that's what turned some people off too. Is like, okay, this is like a gimmick and we get it, but what else is there to it, right?
Well,
is that kind of
the unforgivable sin is they came out and said unapologetically, we're here to make money, we're here to get girls, we're here to like. If we can put our logo on a belt, we're going to do it. So like that was the thing. Like all the other bands were in the corner being all artistic and be like, oh, it's degrading the art and all this stuff or whatever. And Gene Simmons is like, well, I'll put that art on an action figure or something, or a magazine or whatever. But the thing is, though, is like how many if you're going to go like gimmick or any of this stuff. I mean, even something like Spinal Tap. Like how many Spinal Tap songs can you name? Or like think of like really big. I mean, I guess Spinal Tap's a bad example, but think of all the gimmick bands in history and name 3 of their songs. So that there is something past that where you can say like, everybody knows Rock and Roll All Night. Everybody knows Detroit Rock City. I mean, if you sell that, they have some stake to that sizzle. There's a lot of hits there, and there was a point in time where, and people forget this, they ruled the planet. Like there was nothing bigger than these guys all over the country. I mean, like the people were in Japan and everything else were just falling all over them. So, I guess it's just because they were their iconography and their makeup, and it was so accessible and marketable to all different languages that they're watching the show and listening to the music at the same time. But, just iconography doesn't sell records, and they sold, a lot of records.
They put on shows. I mean, they were, if nothing else too, they, much like kind of like probably the Grateful Dead business model of just tour. They were always out touring and always preaching to the masses, right? And always getting themselves in front. So it wasn't like they were these cartoon characters, like a fake band, like the Archies, it wasn't like they were these guys. And then you didn't really know, like it was actually different musicians playing. It's like, they went out and brought that show to your local town, and they did it every year, and very prolific. One of the things I wrote down is by the time this album came out, they put out 5 albums in 2 years, not including Kiss Alive. So 5 albums and a live album. So if nothing else, these guys were in it to win it from a musical standpoint. No one talks about Gene Simmons as like being, you never hear him in best bass player lists. Ace Frehley will come up as a guitar icon, but no one else really does. So, and that to me, that was always kind of the yin and the yang of it is these guys are so well regarded, but but no one really talks about the musicianship. And that's what always kind of like when I was young. Yeah. I checked out the Kiss Dynasty album from the library and listened to I Was Made for Loving You. And one Halloween, I was Peter Criss. I did the makeup. But then after that, I kind of, in full disclosure, I kind of put Kiss to the side. I'm like, not really for like at the time, not really for me, So when it came to do this album, right, and that's why when Eric sent me the list, I'm like, you know what, I want to do this. And what I did, what my approach was I listened to it, and I had my first reactions to it, and then I had to listen. I listened to this. I probably listened to this album more than any album I've ever listened to for a show that we've done. I think it's safe for me to say. Because what I was doing was actually flushing out my Kiss bias. Is literally what I was doing. Is because I had all these preconceived notions, and I could have listened to it and be like, "Oh, this is just more of that kind of stuff." I kept listening to it and kind of got further deeper into it, and kind of some of the stuff that turned me off in the beginning. I kind of warmed up to, and then actually ended up enjoying it. Because I knew I had that inherent bias about Kiss of, this is just going to be like, and it is sex, drugs. I mean, that's what that's what they sing about, but which is okay. Everybody else
about it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what rock and roll is, for Christ's sake.
Right.
But Kiss has that extra like reputation, the hedonism and all that other kind of stuff. So I wanted to give them their due. So I just kept listening and kind of flushed out all of and I've come through it with a lot more respect, I have to say.
Destroyer has always been my favorite album, but I've always in the back of my mind kind of pictured Destroyer and Love Gun as kind of like a double album, because they came out within months of each other, like 15 months of each other.
Yeah.
And I think that all of my favorite songs are, I mean, I've got other ones as well, but I mean, like as a collective, those two albums are where it's at for me. But they went in with the Beatles mindset. They wanted to have 4 individual characters that sang different songs, did harmonies. Everybody could pick their favorite, the quiet drummer, the flashy guitar player, that sort of stuff. And Gene Simmons, like to this day, was always will talk over and over again about how he wanted to be the Beatles. He wanted to be the Beatles. And that was, if you watch their kind of their history or their career, you can kind of see them starting off trying to like find their way. And like there's some songs in there that kind of feel a little Beatlesy and stuff like that. Then they kind of get into the more the dirtier rock and roll stuff. But I mean, like if you're still clearing out that bias, check out Love Gun. But I mean, there's
I started to listen to it actually.
Oh, okay, good. Both albums have are done by the same the album covers, which are huge for me. That's one of the reasons why I got into art, rock and roll art to begin with. Was Ken Kelly, who's the guy who painted. He was a fantasy artist who did all kinds of like Conan the Barbarian and stuff like that, like Boris Vallejo kind of guy. And he also did stuff for like Manowar and Rainbow and stuff. But those album covers, I would just sit there and stare at them because again, subjective imagery. You're hearing something that sounds a little bit naughty. I mean, like the song "Great Expectations" is, like I said, the dumbest Kiss song. But when you're 9 years old and you're listening to this song, then those lyrics, you're like looking out the window or looking out the door to see if your mom can hear, like,
make sure no one's watching.
Yeah. So, I mean, it felt exciting and new and stuff like that to a young kid,
Yeah.
It's impressionable. It's all about impression. Being the resident prog fan, I mean, the advent of having Bob Ezrin, of all people, produce this record. He produced The Wall for Pink Floyd. He produced Peter Gabriel's first record. He did, so he's an established presence there. I mean, they didn't just get some schlug to produce their stuff. So it gave him some credibility, I think, if anybody's really paying attention to who produced the album. But there it is, So, I mean, again, just a lot of this stuff during that time, the excess, and us talking about this stuff, going back, revisiting it. I'm revisiting stuff that I thought that I put away a long time ago myself, and now coming back to it. And it just, so it's a lot of fun to kind of dig in, and maybe you even get a better perspective or a better, understand that they might not have been taking this seriously, as much as we thought they might have been at the time. You know what I mean? And thinking, oh, you know, compared to this band, they suck and all this kind of thing. But it's all like part of the tapestry of the stuff that was there on the scene.
Yeah,
So,
and I don't think Kiss is comparable. Kiss isn't comparable. There's no other band you can really compare Kiss to.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, their contemporaries were the Eagles and Fleetwood Mac and whatever, Led Zeppelin. Like, it was so diverse, but they weren't anything like any of them because of how they dressed and because of how they presented their stage shows.
Mm-hmm.
They fit in with rock and roll, like Aerosmithy, I suppose, kind of stuff. As far as content, lyrically, but they solely occupied a space that no one else. I dare say no one else dared go into.
Mm-hmm.
Also, there weren't other. If memory serves, there weren't Kiss knockoffs.
No,
there weren't other bands that were trying to like really bite off on that.
There were bands around that time as well that were just playing with the regular like bell bottoms and like no house lights. The house lights weren't even off. And these guys came out and like everything is on fire for 2 hours. So yeah.
Maybe Alice Cooper would be the closest because he was very theatrical as well. And kind of, he really went the whole horror route though. I mean, he was doing like decapitations, right. And kind of, but Kiss, like I said, kind of occupied a very unique space because they also transcended that. And that's what they were trying to do on this album with Bob Ezrin is they were trying to refine that sound. They wanted to get something that was going to reach the bigger masses. Because Bob Ezrin, I read stuff with Bob about Bob Ezrin. He goes, I went to go see a Kiss. He goes, I went to go see a Kiss concert when they asked me to work with them. And he goes, the very strange thing about it was all guys in the audience. It was all young, like teen guys. Yeah. And Bob Ezrin's like, if we can get women to if we can make an album that will get women to come to the shows, they'll conquer. And and so that's why you saw songs like Beth on there and some of the other ones to try and not, to moderate the sound a little bit while it's still being Kiss, but to reach a broader audience. And, I would say for that, if that's the mission, then I would say mission accomplished, Andy.
Well, they had that youthful rebellion thing about, first I drink, then I smoke, those kind of lyrics. But then you have like, the song "Flaming Youth" is kind of a silly song, but I mean, like it's a not silly, but it's not it's Shakespeare, But like the lyrics, I'm just gonna read the lyrics. Yep. My parents think I'm crazy and they hate the things I do. I'm stupid and I'm lazy. Man, if they only knew how flaming youth is going to set the world on fire. Flaming youth, our flag is flying higher. It's like getting the kids active and activated and going, like it's that thing where you're a kid, your mom just yelled at you, you go and you throw on your Kiss record and your parents think I'm crazy. Yeah, me too, man. So there was something there, there's not a lot of contemporaries doing that around that time were talking directly to the kids. They were doing their highfalutin kind of like talking about adulthood.
And as kids, we thought that stuff was poetry.
Yeah.
That was as good as it gets, as lyrically. I mean, so yeah, we took it all in.
Flamin' Youth, I gotta say, it's a damn catchy song though.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing is, it doesn't have to be Shakespeare. It doesn't have to make big statements. It's easy to listen to, and especially in that one, Paul Stanley gives a great vocal performance, right? And I think that's half of it is you can have hokey lyrics. It's can you sell them?
Yeah.
And that's the thing with Paul Stanley is he can sell that stuff, and that's why something like Great Expectations. So we're going to get into the album now. Finally, we're going to start talking about it. I wrote Great Expectations. Here's what I wrote. Great Expectations is the worst song I've ever heard. And then I wrote, but it got better. I when I first heard, I'm like, Gene Simmons is a horrible vocalist. I'm like, he just really is not a great, even on God of Thunder. I know God of Thunder is almost like parody. And I want to acknowledge the email that Andy sent, or a couple days ago. Andy sent an email and he goes, here's a demo version of God of Thunder because Paul Stanley wrote it, and here's his demo, and it worked it up. And I dug that version.
It was a disco.
Yeah, and a lot of people, a lot of the comments on YouTube, a lot of the kids, like they're like, I kind of like this. I like the Gene Simmons version, but I like that one too. But so yeah, so God of Thunder is probably like one of their hallmark. I'm guessing one of their concert staples.
Yeah, that's essentially Gene Simmons' theme song, which is so funny because Paul Stanley wrote it.
Yeah.
But it's just that thumping, like metal, like it's like one of the most doom metal songs that they did. I mean, they reunited with Ezrin, I think, a little bit later in the Revenge album, right? And they had a song called Unholy that was very. It might have been not been Ezrin, but they went back to their roots on that album, and it was very evil sounding, But you forgive what he lacks in vocal talent by his personality, and it fits. Like you don't want a demon up there singing like Paul Stanley,
Right.
So, but I mean, every time that song comes on, like it gets smoky and it's all red and it's demonic and it's just like it's part of the opera, the Kiss opera sort of thing. So, it holds such a great place in my heart just because of that.
Yeah, and in listening to this album, first couple times I listened to it, I'm like, wow, this. To me, Eric, you could jump in on this too. I thought the album sounded underproduced. I'm like, I was from a Kiss album, I'm expecting like, what you see on stage or when you're like big, really bombastic in your face, and I wasn't feeling it. I was like, oh, it sounds like there should be more like oomph behind it. The problem was, I needed to turn it up. When you turn this album up loud,
there you go.
It's a difference maker. If you listen to this kind of at a normal volume, you can be like, oh, okay. I was kind of like, I was kind of underwhelmed. And then I turned it loud and I'm like, oh, okay.
That's the mindset. That is the headspace of bands like older, newer bands that are doing older stuff. Like they're still trying to do like analog kind of thing. And there's a couple of bands that I like that have Neve consoles, and they're still, so their albums sound a little bit unremarkable, but yes, you have to turn it up. That's what you had to do back in the day. Nowadays, everything is recorded so loud. And so just like, it's like right there, you could have it on 3 and it's like, it's not any different than if you were to like really, but that was the point, and a lot of times too, is like producers always had the sense to say, you guys need to be a little bit more restrained on the vinyl because you are that big bombastic live band. You need to save it for the show. So let's just put the music out there. People paying attention, they're gonna listen to it. They're gonna like some of the songs, the grooves. But when they see you on stage, you're going to give them something more, and there it is. So so this was, and they are undoubtedly one of the biggest live acts, I guess, at the time, and more, and it just, So the formula worked, I feel.
Yeah.
So when you say that the album is unremarkable, maybe it was supposed to be.
Underproduced. It sounded like there should have been more. But then when I turned it up, it was like then it kind of bloomed. I'm kind of like, oh, okay. Now I'm kind of getting the force. I was listening to my car, and listening in my car. I'm like, I was like, okay,
right.
But then when I got home and I cranked it, I'm like, oh, it really was a difference maker. Especially like, Detroit Rock City segueing into King of the Nighttime World. I'm like, those to me, Andy, those are that's like a 1-2 punch song. I love when artists can really put 2 songs together, and especially when they put the car crash in between it, and then it just goes right into King of the Nighttime World. I'm like, that kind of stuff I love when it's done well, and they did it well there. They just kind of rolled into the next one, didn't stop.
There was, I mean, when I was a kid, the imagination would go wild when you're hearing this stuff, and the car crash would go, it just crashes and does the warbly guitar goes right into that guitar into the next song, and in my mind that was like a part of an engine or something, like just being like waving in the wind, or something going into the thing. But they were really good at anthem songs, like King of the Nighttime World. It's a good song or whatever, but then at the end it's got the King of the Nighttime World. You could just see the pyrotechnics going up, and
Yeah.
at the very end there, and like Shout It Out Loud, and Rock and Roll All Night, and they just had so many anthem songs that got the crowd going, and that they were all about the marketing. They knew how to get the records, and they were in it to sell it. So like they knew what to do, except for The Elder. They didn't know what they were doing when The Elder came out. But
songs from The Elder.
Oh my God!
I think that's the time. That's when they tried to get. Oh, we're trying to be serious now.
Oh,
Yeah,
concept. I read that there was supposed to be Andy. I read there was supposed to be a movie attached to that at some point, and that's why to a lot of people the album didn't make sense because the movie never came out, and then they shuffled the track listing around anyway, so people didn't really know about it. But Destroyer, I think talk about anthem songs. I mean, Detroit Rock City, King of the Nighttime World, God of Thunder. Flaming Youth, that's kind of a fist pumper, right? That's like an arena rock song, and of course, Shout It Out Loud.
Yep.
I mean, you've got the Kiss blueprint on this album for someone that's never if someone's thinking about listening to Kiss, or if you have that bias and you look at them like, oh my God, it's just like it's too much. Give Destroy. I think Andy, would you say that this is the album for someone to?
Sure, but I think that like the album that I played the most as a kid was Double Platinum, which was a cheat because it's like it's a cheat. But I mean, if you're going to sit down, sit down and put on an album, I would say this or Love Gun, absolutely. And it's funny because Love Gun, it's got all these great songs, and then it's got the song Christine 16 that everybody loved back in the day, but it's problematic to say the very least. But I mean, like there was a song called Funky Cole Medina back in the 80s from
Tone Loc.
He sampled that song. It's from Christine 16. Anyway, going back to what we were talking about Great Expectations being a dumb song. It's also kind of redundant, and I don't want to turn this into a bitch session, but like Do You Love Me at the end of this album has got the same thing. He's just like, in Great Expectations, he's like, I play the guitar and my fingers and all this stuff. And then like in Do You Love Me, he's like, you really like my limousine. You like the way the wheels roll. It's the same thing. It's the same, like,
thematically, they're the same. Yeah.
It's that, look at how awesome I am. And I know how much you love me. But, or do you love me? That sort of stuff. But it's just pretty funny because, like, when it comes down to like street cred, Nirvana, like, and Anthrax, and like a lot of these bands that people hold in really high regard were huge Kiss fans. Like Nirvana did a cover of "Do You Love Me," and on the back of Nevermind, the back of the album cover, there's like a picture of a monkey with a bunch of meat behind him, like a collage that Kurt Cobain put together. There's a picture of Kiss, like there's the monkey, and then there's like a mountain of meat, and like on top of it is Kiss. So it's like, it's like a band. Are they a band's band? Maybe, I don't know, but I guess not, because it's mostly musicians that don't like him. So I don't know. I don't know what people want.
You make it's funny. You make a good point with Great Expectations and Do You Love Me, because it's two songs that are basically the same thing thematically, but the execution is really, Do You Love Me is much more. Again, it's much more anthemic and kind of. And I read an article about Great Expectations, and the guy was trying to figure out if this was supposed to be a serious song or if it was supposed to be tongue in cheek, and they knew. And the guy kind of determined at the end that he thinks it was supposed to be serious because Gene Simmons was very passionate about completing it and finishing it and wanting it to have a certain, have the choir and do all these things. The choir kind of reminds me a little bit of You Can't Always Get What You Want. I was kind of like, is he trying to like get a little bit of the Stones in there? But yeah, his lyrics for me, they're just a little too smarmy. That's what with Gene Simmons, it's like a little bit too much. It's like he goes, Sweet Pain. It's kind of like, they don't age well. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, so to piggyback on that,
it's a great song, Sweet Pain. I like it. It's very catchy, but
Yeah, I mean, there's there's at least 3 or 4 great songs on every one of their albums, and then there's a lot of stinkers. And I'm saying that as a huge fan, like a huge fan. I will put up with anything that they put out at least once. But there's some of the, like, almost the entire Unmasked album is kind of not great. But what was I going to say? Oh, they were very conscious, like I was saying earlier about the anthemic stuff and whatever. But I mean, like I've read every one of them individually wrote autobiographies and listened to the audiobooks and all that stuff. And Gene Simmons even wrote a book called Kiss and Makeup, which is pretty funny. But it about the history of Kiss and stuff. But it's all one-sided, you know.
Yeah, I was going to say revisionist history. I'm sorry.
But I mean, I got to meet Peter Criss and Ace Frehley's been at the horror movie convention and stuff that I do artwork for and stuff. But like Peter Criss was just the sweetest guy. We talked to him forever. My wife and I. He had male breast cancer for a while, so he was really? like part of his convention circuit was to tell guys to check themselves out to make sure that they don't have male breast cancer. But Paul Stanley would be listening to the radio and would hear like. He heard Brandy, You're a Fine Girl, that song, and he's like, we need one of those. So he wrote Hard Luck Woman. So it was like he would hear, like he'd be collecting songs and then writing songs based on what he liked or what he thought the Kiss needed and stuff, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's interesting. I met Ace Frehley a couple of times because he used to live one town over from Dobbs Ferry. He lived in Irvington, and then he lived in the 80s, and he lived in Greenburgh. And he one of his kids, he had his kid's birthday party in the pizzeria that I used to work in. So, I delivered pizza to Ace a couple of times too. So, but that was in the 80s.
Was he conscious?
Yeah, I was gonna say he was in Neverland.
Well, I heard he was at the time that people were saying he was kind of an asshole at that point. Like he had was too good for Kiss, and he thought he was.
He's always been a little high on his own supply, as it were.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure about that, but it's just that's I remember. Yeah. I remember those days when you had seen him and it's like blew my mind. Oh my God, yeah. We worked in Jimmy's, even Tommy and he's Frehley from Kiss, but but I always heard that he was kind of a little whatever.
Full of himself.
He's probably he probably is, but I mean, he was just always high, and I still follow him on Facebook, and he'll post videos all the time of him just going up to Walmart. He's just to this day, it sounds like he had a stroke or something from all the drugs. Wow. But the way he talks is just he is either drunk or he has done so much that I think he's sober. He's supposed to be sober, but
I think so.
He's done a lot of damage, which there's not. I mean, it happens, but I mean, it's just it's a shame. I think that he, it's just in the autobiographies, Gene talks about the fact that he's never been drunk in his entire life. He's only been stoned once against his will. Wow. So, it's Gene Simmons. But anyway, he had absolutely no tolerance for drugs or being drunk and never thought it was funny and that sort of stuff. So there was always that tension between him and Paul versus Gene. Yeah,
there's that famous.
Ace and Peter.
That famous interview on YouTube. You can find it with Tom Snyder.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable.
Where Ace is just totally ripped and drunk, and Gene and Paul are just trying to manage him through the interview. Before we get back to Destroyer, there is we got to ring the bell. We do have an ELO Kiss connection. Of course we do, because Ace Frehley is known for his cover of Do Ya. That's one of his famous covers is Do Ya, which is an ELO song. It's actually a song by The Move, but written by Jeff Lynne, and that's
wasn't that when he was Frehley's Comet?
Yep, that was his thing. So, let's talk a little bit about yesterday. I wrote Beth is Kisses yesterday. That's why I said yesterday. But Beth is kind of the outlier, right? They didn't really want this on the album. They were kind of again, we there's a lot of revisionist history when you read about stuff. When you read new interviews about old stuff from Paul Stanley or Gene Simmons, apparently the stories seem to change a lot. He didn't really write this. Peter Criss didn't really write the song. This, that, and the other thing, and But apparently, what is true though is it was originally called Beck, right? It was about this girl named Becky who was really clingy to her boyfriend and kept calling the studio like, "When are you coming home?" And they wrote this song, and then I think Bob Ezrin was like, "Well, we want to make it a little bit nicer and make her not so like psychotic. So it's more about, hey, I'm on the road, or we're trying to do it." So how does Beth fit in, Andy? How does Beth fit into the Kiss world with you? Is it one that you tolerate and kind of like?
Yeah, I mean, it was ubiquitous before I was conscious, to the band and stuff. So it was already around. It was already part. Like I would imagine that if it came out while I was a fan and conscious about it, it would have been a little bit of a shock. But I'd heard the same thing, that like with Peter Criss had only really brought a chorus, and it was Beck, and then every time they tried to work on the song, like he was too bombed or didn't want to deal with it and stuff. So the other people in the band, or the kind of tertiary people in the studio, kind of put together a lot of the song. So like Ace certainly didn't have anything to do with it,
Yeah.
So like, and it's funny too when the videos, or they go on these, variety shows in the 70s, that they were constantly being called on there. It would be Peter Criss on a stool with the spotlight singing, and then just Kiss standing in the background.
Doing nothing, hands in their pockets like a stand-up comedian, right?
Yeah, or being all dramatic, like with the smoke, and Gene Simmons staring at,
And Beth has the distinction of no other members. There's no members of Kiss on this, because the guitar work was done by Dick Wagner, who was with Alice Cooper, and then it's an orchestra and a piano, and no other Kiss and no other vocalist. So, and that's why I wrote that Beth is Kiss's Yesterday, because Yesterday for the Beatles was like that. It was the first time where it was a solo Beatle. There was no other Beatles involved in it instrumentally. But Beth is what brought, love it or hate it. It could be an albatross around their neck now, but that's what brought them to those variety shows. That's the song. That's the song that kind of got them in front of kids and got them in front of young people. Because before that, you had to go to the record store. There was no MTV. This stuff was played on radio, but maybe FM radio. And Beth was what they were looking for. They were looking to reach a bigger audience, and maybe this wasn't the perfect vehicle, but for the time, Eric, this song was huge. It was. I think I even probably recorded it off the radio when I was like 10.
It remains. I mean, it's my favorite track off the album, to be perfectly honest. Absolutely.
Wow.
I always loved the song. Yeah. I mean, to me, it's one of those like sentimental 70s tracks, but even now it still works. Yeah. That's in Detroit.
It's a great song. It's a great song. Yeah. And it fits right in with,
and I love his vocal on it. Peter Criss is, his vocal, he has got that emotion in the voice and the sort of rattle in his throat there. I like that.
Peter Criss has got some great songs like Hard Luck Woman and Hooligan and Black Diamond. Mm-hmm. He's got that raspy kind of bluesy kind of rock and roll voice. It's a shame he didn't sing more.
Yeah, just like every other band, Eric, that we've done stuff about squabbling, internal strife. it undoes you, right? And then Peter Criss leaves. They bring in Eric Carr, and they didn't make Eric Carr a full member of the band. So Ace Frehley was like, okay, well, I'm outvoted 2-1 now, because Paul and Gene are pretty much always going to be in lockstep, and Ace, and Ace was becoming more disconnected anyway. I mean, on this album, that's why they got Dick Wagner to originally do the solo for Sweet Pain, because Ace wasn't around. He's like playing cards, or he was doing something else. It's kind of like, so it was very strange. Like these guys, it's like, okay, I just won't show up. Yeah, someone else. I would think I would have like the pride of, you're not recording this without me. Like, I'm the guitarist. Like, I'm gonna do this stuff. But already the cracks were showing.
Ace was an interesting character, collected Nazi memorabilia, and made lots of Hitler jokes to Gene and Paul, who are Jewish.
Yeah.
So like they would, Gene Simmons would come in and say like, "Hey, why weren't you at practice or whatever?" And he'd like salute Hitler and to Gene Simmons, and it's like,
wow,
But he was just he was so out of it that I
Yeah.
think that he didn't realize, maybe he didn't know what he was doing. And the original Kiss logo was designed by Ace Frehley, and the S's are the SS.
Yep.
And and they had to change it in Germany. Like if you look at the German import covers have a different S. So I'm not saying he's a Nazi. I'm just saying he was just whacked out of his mind. And so he was crazy anyway. He was just a little crazy anyway. And I think that they just started hating each other and they just stopped, showing up. I think that, and Gene and Paul wanted to be like, keep that gravy train going, like we need more songs.
They looked at it as a business, as a business concern. And, and that's what led down the road to, after they took the makeup off, then they put the makeup on, they kind of decided, right, that these are now characters, and, like we're not going to keep, like with Vinnie Vincent, they did the Egyptian, the Ankh, and the Fox with Eric Carr. And then it's like, no, these, the Cat and Space Ace, the Spaceman, they're characters, and we could put anybody else into them and wear that, because that's the characters, quote unquote, that people want to see. And, so it almost made these people replaceable, and it kind of took the uniqueness away from the original core band, because now it could be anybody underneath the makeup. And I guess in a way, I think they had said, well, that Kiss can now be immortal, right? Yeah. We can retire if we wanted to, although they're doing the holograms. But when they had thought about continuing, if I'm not mistaken, they said, well, we could just send out a whole other group of people as Kiss, because it's the icons, it's the makeup, it's the characters that people want to see.
That's one of the biggest things I disagree with as an artist and just somebody in marketing and that. I mean, it would have been like they all had their lore. I mean, like they had comic books and stuff. Introduce new characters. I mean, like I understand that like nobody went for Vinnie Vincent's Wizard, that but he's there. He was a character and he came and kind of went. And then there was like the Fox and he kind of came and went. And then Spaceman and the Cat are back. Yay! It's like it's a soap opera. When the or a comic book when they came back for the reunion. So it was like I don't know. The Cat makeup it's Peter Criss. Like it's just fried into my brain. There's an after image there. You can't not see that and think, you don't think Tommy Thayer,
or Eric Singer. Nothing against those guys.
Sorry, Eric Singer.
Yeah, they're employees. They're employees of Kiss. Yeah. They're not in Kiss per se. All right. Let's uncork our segment, 3 Lies and a Truth. Okay. I think this is a good time for it. So I'm going to read 4 statements, A, B, C, and D, right? I'll read them and then we'll let Eric will go first. Because I'm going to leave the Kiss expert for last, because I don't want him to influence Eric. I want to snag at least one of his. I don't know if I'm going to get Andy, so I got to try and snag one.
I'm no expert.
So I'm going to read 4 statements. 4 statements. 3 of them are lies. 1 of them is true. Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Don't say anything until I go
Not
through.
Saying a word.
Okay. A. Kiss stands for Knights in Satan's Service. B. Gene Simmons' solo Kiss album is the biggest selling out of the 4 solo efforts that each band member put out.
Okay.
C. Kiss was the first band to sell out the Palladium in New York City without a record deal or significant radio airplay. And D. Final statement. Kiss made their first comic book appearance in Howard the Duck, the comic series Howard the Duck. So, Eric, I'll give it to you again. A. Kiss actually stands for Knights in Satan's Service. B. Gene Simmons' solo Kiss album is the biggest seller of the 4 solo albums that they put out. C. Kiss was the first band to sell out the Palladium in New York City without a record deal or significant airplay. And D. Kiss made their first comic book appearance in Howard the Duck series, because they did have comic books, and they actually put their blood. I remember they put their blood. They gave their blood for the ink and Marvel and all that kind of stuff. So, Eric, 3 of those are false statements. They are not true. One of those fantastical factoids is real. Which one are you going with?
Oh, so 3 of them are not true. Okay.
Yeah, three lies and a truth. 3 of those are fake. Only 1 of those are true.
I'm gonna go with the comic book one. I'm gonna go with D.
So you say Kiss made their first comic book appearance in Howard the Duck. You're saying that's true. Okay.
Yes.
Andy, do you want me to read them to you again?
Nope.
Okay.
It was Ace Frehley. Ace Frehley's solo album was the bestseller because of New York Groove, so that's wrong. The Knights and Satan.
So you say?
Yeah. Well, you know the answers.
I do.
Knights and Satan Service was some evangelical, like Billy Graham type character in the 70s that spread that rumor. I'm not aware of the ticket sales for any of the venues back then, so that's very, very that could be it. But the Howard the Duck sounds very familiar because I don't know if I had ever seen that, but for some reason that is pinging true. So it's one of the last two. It's either C or D.
Well, you got to give me one. One of those is false, and one of those is true, perhaps.
Shit.
Perhaps. Going by your process of elimination.
I'm going to go with Howard the Duck.
You're going to go with Howard the Duck.
Yeah.
Okay. So 3 lies and a truth. A, Kiss stands for Knights in Satan's Service is incorrect. Gene Simmons says, I don't know where that came from. That's false. Yeah. B, Gene Simmons' solo Kiss album is the biggest seller of the 4 efforts. That is incorrect as well. Ace Frehley's was, and it had Back in the New York Groove, which was probably the biggest non-Kiss hit, probably, or one of the it's got the most longevity, or at least. C, Kiss was the first band to sell out the Palladium in New York City without a record deal or significant radio airplay. That is false. That was actually good. Twisted Sister was the first band to sell out the Palladium in New York City without a record deal or radio airplay. So both of you gentlemen have won. Kiss made their first comic book appearance in Howard the Duck, specifically issue number 12. Nice. Was the first, because they would make many appearances in Marvel Comics. They would start showing up, Spider-Man and all this other stuff, but their very first was Howard the Duck, number 12. Congratulations, gentlemen. Yay. 3 lies and a truth, and you have worked your way to the truth. Congratulations.
So what do we win?
Bragging rights until the next episode. Bragging rights until the next episode, because now I knew some of that. I thought I was going to get Andy with the Gene Simmons one because I knew if I switched out the names, I was going to kind of like,
I knew that wasn't true. It was either good. I thought it was Peter Criss that his album sold the best. I thought for sure that was, but I knew it wasn't Gene.
I have a fun factoid about Gene Simmons solo. Do you know who sang female backup vocals on that album?
I do. I'll leave it to Eric though. His girlfriend at the time.
Who would that be?
Oh, well, there were a lot.
Yeah, but one in particular was actually a singer and had hits at the time. Yeah, Andy, uncork it.
Well, I don't know. Katie Seagal, Peg Bundy was on the album. Yeah, there's also who were you going to say?
Cher.
Cher is she on the album? I know he was dating Cher for a while.
I believe she was on the album also.
My girlfriend. What is that? I
didn't say your girlfriend.
That's what you said.
Oh, his girlfriend.
His girlfriend.
Oh, Gene Simmons' his girl.
I thought you meant me.
I don't know who you were dating.
I thought you meant to say, and I had a crush on Cher. I'm like, no.
I don't know who you were dating in the 70s.
Cher and
Katie Seagal from Mario.
Katie Seagal and
there was a lot of people on there.
He dated. Oh my goodness, a lot.
He dated. Yeah,
I can see her in my Diana Ross. Jesus.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Wow. All right.
Yeah,
Diana Ross too.
Are they still married though? Him and Shannon Tweed? Are they still?
I think so. I don't know how.
They might be together. They're still together, perhaps.
Yeah.
There was some uncomfortable TV interviews. There was that one where she was just like so mad, like something came up, and he's just so like flippant about a lot of things, and he probably doesn't mean to be, but I think he can't help but being Gene when the cameras are on. Yeah, he might be a sweetheart when the cameras are off, but when the cameras are on, he's Gene.
He's on.
He starts his autobiography essentially saying, "I have never had a problem loving myself. I have never had a problem telling people that I'm not doing what I don't want to do, or I will never compromise my happiness or any of it's just there's like a paragraph of like all the things that you're taught
His manifesto.
All the things that you're taught not to do, like he's just like, I will never not be selfish. I will never get married. I will never compromise for a woman. I will never. And he's like, I've known that since I was a kid, and you can't expect me to change now. So
fair enough. It's the Gene Simmons manifesto, and at least he's letting you know what to expect. Then, at least he's not trying to pretend that he's something that he's not. Then
that's true.
So, all right, let's get back to Destroyer. Let's talk about some favorite tracks here. Yep. Eric, you said Beth is your topper, but what besides that? Because that's such an outlier that there's no other songs like it.
Detroit Rock City.
Detroit Rock City is the one.
That's always been probably my favorite song by them, because it's
Get Up, Get Down.
Just the opening, the whole like ambient noise thing in the beginning, and the it just kind of. And it takes a while too for the song to get going. Yeah. It's almost 2 minutes. You're going into like a minute 45. And then the song kicks in, and I just love that riff, and it just
Any other ones?
I think it's one of their stronger.
Great Expectations.
No.
We can't get you on the Great Expectations train with the bells.
There's some good stuff on here, but I mean, I think those might be the two. For me, there's two strongest tracks on the record in terms of production, in terms of just solid songs. I mean, Beth with the the orchestration and all that, they really went to town with, I think with these tracks in that sense.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Andy, what do you got?
Well, Detroit Rock City is, it's part of the furniture now. Like, I mean, we've heard the song 800 million times, but like when you listen to the song and you're into it and you're invested, it gives me goosebumps. Like when the whole song stops and it's just the little guitar solo, and then everything kicks in and it shoots back off. I mean, even the riffs during the vocals, it's just drums and the bass kind of thing. I love that so much. The Detroit Rock City is just on a whole other. There's a mood to it that's got it's just it's the same thing with Love Gun. The song Love Gun, it just feels like a different, like they transcended for a little while, and did this, there's layers and there's feeling.
They achieved what Kiss in a perfect world would be, right? Like that's kind of like the perfect examples of that. What else besides Detroit Rock City? Can I get you for Great Expectations? Can I mark you down for that or no?
No.
Oh,
he's so obsessed with the song.
Yeah.
we know it's so bad.
Nobody is more obsessed with that song than Gene Simmons. But I think that Flaming is pretty cool. Sweet Pain, it's all right. I'm looking at the list right now. Shout It Out Loud that's another one, song.
Right? Of course,
song. I mean, that's the end of I think that if I remember correctly, that's the last song on the Kiss that Meets the Phantom of the Park. That's like the crescendo of the movie.
Yeah, the finale.
Or the beginning. I don't remember which one it was, but I mean, it's just I associate that with that song even more so than Rock and Roll All Night, with like the marketing, the bigness and the crowds and the carnivals and the, fire and all that stuff or whatever. So yeah, it's tough. It's tough for me because, there's probably, I don't know how many songs they put out. It's like the Beatles. The Beatles put out like 200 songs. You can't even and then they keep finding them. There's another Beatles song that nobody, or whatever. But I mean, it's the same thing with Kiss. They put out so many songs and,
they're super prolific. I mean, these guys worked at a breakneck pace in this. I mean, they slowed down actually after Love Gun, right? Yeah. They kind of,
yeah. Well, they had the Beatles mentality of like, we got to put out a song or an album a year, or we're gonna, we got to get momentum going or whatever.
Yeah.
But let's say they have 200 songs. I absolutely love 60 of them. Like, love them. And then there's probably 10 or 15 of them that I just despise, and then the other ones are fine. But I mean, like those 65 are like, I will listen to them till I die. Like they're on all my playlists, they're just such good songs. So there's only, this is my favorite Kiss album, but there's probably only out of the 10, probably 6 that I really, really love.
Yeah. Rock and Roll Party doesn't really count because it's a minute 20 and it's not really a song, but it has 3 songwriters, but it's not even an instrumental. It's just kind of
Just
noise.
crowd.
Yeah, it's like crowd noise almost.
Yeah.
So we'll call it 9 songs, 6 out of 9. That's 2/3 of the album. So you're in good shape there. I'm going to go with Detroit Rock City and King of the Nighttime World together. Like I said, I just love how those two songs are kind of mashed together. And again, for me, for someone quote unquote new to Kiss, I really like it. Just kind of, it kept me propelled. You know, there wasn't a stop and there really wasn't a change in direction. It just kind of brought me into the next song, which I really kind of dug for someone kind of listening to this and coming to it and exposing, because I've never listened to a complete Kiss album. You know, this is the first time, you know, full disclosure. I know the hits, but I've never sat down and listened. So for me, it was great. And then Flaming Youth. I started to get an appreciation for what Paul Stanley does and how he does it and why he's the front man for Kiss. Like he can, like I said, he can take the schmaltzy stuff, but he can sell it. Yeah, you know, and that's the key for those kids. And for the young people that they're going to believe, that they're going to throw their fist in the air when he's talking about moms and dads and people don't understand, or, getting in my car and that kind of stuff. So, I really got more of an appreciation for Paul Stanley after really diving into this album. So I'll go with Flaming Youth as well. It's catchy. It's catchy. I was unexpected. I wasn't expecting it to be like so catchy and poppy. And that's why I like that's why I like the Paul Stanley version of God of Thunder, because it's kind of, it's a little, it's I Was Made for Loving You-esque, right? It's got that disco beat, but both versions are good because they're so different. They're so different.
In his autobiography, Paul said that he was having a hard time figuring out who he wanted to be as a frontman. And one of the shows, he just kind of broke into a preacher, like an evangelist, and he's just like, I know you all people here today want to listen to some rock and roll, and then like the crowd went nuts, and he's like, okay, well, I'm going to do this. And he just started doing it. And like, that's his persona. It. He's the evangelist of rock and roll. And like, if you listen to him in between all the songs now, and that he's doing the Southern preacher of rock and roll sort of thing. But, Dean, I'll throw you together a playlist of songs you need to hear. I'll cut through the meat, cut through the fat for you.
Yeah. Send it to me.
A play kissed.
A play kissed. Yeah. One thing I was gonna going back to the 3 Lies and a Truth. Yeah. One of the lies I was gonna make up, which I think would have stumped Andy, was because Kiss was on Casablanca Records, and there was another very popular group that was on Casablanca Records. So one of the lie was going to be that Casablanca Records was trying to get Kiss to team up and make a song with the Village People.
It was Donna Summer.
Because Village People were on Casablanca too.
Oh, were they really?
Yeah, and they were, they were mainly like that kind of disco label, and it was odd that Kiss was on Casablanca Records.
That's so funny. It was
kind of not that, so that was going to be I was trying to figure out a way to word it, and then I kind of was like, forget it, but I think that might have stumped you. If I had said Casablanca Records was trying to put the Village People and Kiss together, I think that would have made you think. You're like, wow.
It would have. Yeah, I know Donna Summer, they were pushing the two, and they were even on compilation albums together because they were trying to put
K-Tel, Kiss, Donna Summer.
They were the two children, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, Love to Love You Baby isn't the most radio friendly thing either from Donna Summer. I mean, that's kind of kind of get you going too. It's not safe for kids either. So I think that's going to do it for Destroyer. I got to say my eyes were opened to Kiss. Not that I didn't respect them. I just didn't really kind of I don't want to say pay them no mind, but didn't really kind of go and explore them a little bit. So I'm so glad that we did, because I swear I listened to this album so many times, and each time I kind of understood it a little bit more. And like I said, that kind of veneer of kind of judging them for the way they act personally and for how they treated, Peter, Chris, and, I like Andy said, I kind of put that, I tried to put that aside and go back into 76 when these guys were a cohesive unit and they were hungry, and they weren't that yet. And they were trying to get there, and we can talk about how they acted when they got there, but Destroyer, it has such an ominous title, but it's really just great. Like it's kind of poppy. It's heavy, but it's fist pumping rock and roll. And there's not much more you get. 76 was a great year for that. That was kind of,
it was.
Right, yeah. Eric? That was kind of like the thing. It was like about it. It was the bicentennial. It was America. It was all that great stuff. I have
a lot of fond memories of that year.
Yeah.
Some great albums came out that year, including Hotel California.
Yeah. New World Record.
New World Record. Yeah.
Sorry.
The first Boston album. I mean,
Yeah, there was a lot that was going on.
But yeah, I from my experience with the band, I mean, as a kid, I was enamored with the whole, like Andy, the whole sort of image, as it were. But it kind of lends itself to some of the stuff that eventually would take place in the 80s with MTV and stuff. So there were a lot of bands that making that kind of noise, then that kind of thing, throwing that ridiculous sort of things out there. And of course, with music videos, it got even more sort of like, but everybody was doing it.
Yeah.
Kiss might have been one of the first bands to actually put on a show without even having to put on a show, right? I mean, because all they needed to do was just wear the makeup. And
even if it's
they're selling action figures and comic books and things. Star Wars before Star Wars, for God's sake. I mean, you're talking about, I mean, they were just, and they knew what they were doing. They leaned into it. And like Andy was saying, you got to respect that. Respect the fact that they were unapologetic. Yeah. So
they brought it, and they were, being flown around on wires, and they're wearing 20 pounds of costume and makeup, and so they didn't clock in. I mean, didn't just clock in. They did their thing.
They paid their dues when it wasn't the hip thing to do, but then it paid off where they became much, much beloved. So check this out. It's on streaming services. There is a remastered version of Destroyer, because they felt that some improvements could be made. So Bob Ezrin got the tapes, digitally transferred them, and kind of remixed it. So that's there as well, with a whole bunch of extra material as well. Mm-hmm. All the demos and all that kind of stuff. But if you just want the original experience, which I recommend you do, just listen to Destroyer, listen to those 10 songs, listen to that statement, and you'll get where they were in 76. And I think that is so important to understand. This is another one of those, I think, Rock and Roll 101 albums. You really should listen to this one, and it gives you a flavor for when they were hungry. Like I said, today it's easy to look at them as just this business concern and this promotion machine. But back then they were guys that were just banging albums out, trying to get that brass ring.
Yeah.
And this was the album that they reached for, and they finally did grab it after like five albums in 2 years. I mean, that's just that's like Chicago style prolific, right, Eric? I mean, Chicago was on that pace, but they did it with double albums.
They did. Yeah.
But same type of thing. So that's going to do it for this episode of the 3324 podcast. If you've been watching us on YouTube, you see R2 or Little Arthur is still behind Andy. He's still waiting patiently for some direction or some orders. There he is. R2. Check us out on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and give us a like and a subscribe. And if you're
He's got a lot to say. He's making the final comments there.
I don't like you at all. Well, I don't like you either. Anyway, nobody likes you. I don't like you either. Make sure you subscribe, follow us on your favorite podcast platform as well. So this way you get notified when new episodes drop. But here's the hint. It's every Thursday, but do it anyway, just so you get the nice, gentle reminder. Don't forget Andrew Cremeans art on Instagram. We're going to put a link in the show notes. Plus, I'm going to put a link for the alternate version of God of Thunder. I think you guys can check that. Andy sent it, and I listened to it. And I'm like, I dig this. It hits me in my pop feels. So it was like kind of in my wheelhouse. But let us know on social media how you feel about that version. Is the demon meant to sing it, or is it better as a little pop disco-y ditty by its author? And he's like, no, it's bombast, it's demon, it's roaring, it's all that stuff that Gene brings to it. Andy, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure. I'm always happy to be here.
Yeah, and we will have you back on again real soon, as always, with little Arthur in tow as well, and maybe you'll have a 3PO behind you.
No, that's too expensive.
No? What about a hammerhead?
Sure. I'll take one.
Get the Hammerhead replica.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, we'll drop that link in the show notes. Check out Andy on Instagram. He's a busy man, but he does a lot of great work. And he's got the samples there that you can look at it and give him a follow as well, so you can keep up with what he's doing. And as always, Eric and I will be in our comfy chairs, just waiting until next week until we catch up with you again. And thanks for checking us out. We're on Instagram and Facebook as well. We've got a great group. Go check us out there too. So for Andy and for Eric, this has been Dean, and we will catch you on the flip side.
You've been listening to the 3324 podcast with Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider, so please like, subscribe, and rate to become a part of the 3324 family. Your feedback is important, so make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 3324 podcast and on Twitter at 3324p to join the conversation.